Hey everybody, welcome to another CrushLivePoker.com hand review. And in this particular episode, we're going to be taking a look at two hands where some people really left some money on the table. And if you want to get good at poker and if you want to increase your win rate, you cannot miss these spots to add extra money to your stack. These particular hands came from TCH Live. If you're not familiar with TCH Live, they do live streams every Monday and Thursday from 6:30 p.m. They do live streams every Monday and Thursday from 6 to 10 p.m. Central Time. Now, we did this video a couple weeks ago about increasing your win rate by making more money at the table with this tip. Now we're going to take a look at where you don't want to miss out and do what these players did in this particular situation. One of the other things I want to mention too is we always put out coupon codes in these videos. In this particular video, you can look in the description and it's YTPLAY. And if you go over to Crush Live Poker, that will actually get you the first 37 days for free. If you click on subscribe and put that in the coupon code field here, YTPLAY will get you the first 37 days for free. You can look through the curriculum. You can download all of the different files. We have dozens and dozens of podcasts and videos that come out every single month. This is from 6/15/2020. We can see that in this hand we've got a straddle here, so it's 5-5-10. And we're going to look at Queen of the Felt here. She is going to make a raise here off of about a 1K stack with Ace-10 of spades. She's going to make it 40, which I think is fine, playing straight 5-5-10. So I'm 35 to 40 open. Going to get a call here from the hijack with the Queen-Jack offsuit, which is not a good call, obviously. Not even a call that I'm going to make. And we're going to see it super multi-way here. We're going to see a small blind call in seat 6, and then we are going to have the straddle, who is the last blind here, in this case, also call. Now we can see that the straddle has 7-6 suited, but we know from, of course, listening to me and my training material that people will over defend in these spots getting a price. So one of the things that's misconstrued is that heads up you get to defend more, but more multi-way you're supposed to defend tighter. So you'll see all kinds of garbage being completed here in the straddle, when in fact you're actually supposed to defend a little bit tighter. Now obviously you are getting much more of a price, but it's important to recognize who you're up against. If we're playing out of the Queen of Felt's hand and we're trying to figure out if we're going to value bet across multiple streets or go for 3 streets with a 1-pair hand, you have to understand that the guy in the third blind or the guy closing the action pre-flop, in this case in the straddle, is going to be wider and is going to have more hands that are weaker than our hand to call us with at the end, especially some of the weaker top pair types of hands, like, for example, like Queen-10 off, where if she had raised and somebody in the field had called, most likely they're not going to have Queen-10 off, but they might certainly complete in the straddle with Queen-10 off or Queen-9 off or something like that. And that's what's going to happen here. I mean, we're going to target the straddle's hand here in Mahdi out of seat 8. So this is what's important to note. You can see Bond's hand is not populating. So pretty action flop for what's out there here. So Queen of Felt has top with Ace-10 of spades. You can see that Mahdi here has a gut shot straight flush draw with the 7-6 of clubs here. And it's even slightly better than that too. I mean, there isn't necessarily a word for this, but it's a gut shot straight flush draw, and it also has 3 to a straight flush, which means that he can turn a lot of equity here. He can turn a lot of equity here with a straightening card on the turn, like a 9, an 8. All those hands are going to give him additional equity on the turn. Obviously, he can pair up, but it's slightly better than just, a gut shot straight flush draw. He can turn several more cards that are going to give him additional outs on the turn as well. So normally in a spot like this, I would definitely consider check raising in his spot. Now, from what I had seen of the Queen of Felt, she's not making too many, like a lot of people, unless they're entirely clueless, are making too many continuation bet bluffs into multiple opponents with total air. Like if she had Ace-Jack of diamonds or Ace-Queen off, she's not necessarily going to fire out here at this board. So when she does bet, usually means that she is going to have something. However, the board is somewhat dynamic, and there can be overcards that might run off. Now, she might have some of those overcards, or she might have an overpair. This is a very, very clear-cut check raise against a field better, meaning that, let's say the preflop raiser doesn't check, and then Bauman bets, or somebody else in position, the field better bets. I would check raise this almost 100% of the time. And then you might even get into situations where the preflop raiser was trying to like play an overpair in a safe way, kind of multi-way, to try to find out what's going on. It's not super common, but you'll see it at the higher stakes, and you basically drive them out. So definitely against a field better, I'm going to be check raising this board a ton. Against the preflop raiser, it's close because of the fact that usually people aren't going to be just totally bluffing. I think if there's a call in between, just like we approach preflop, we're definitely more incentivized to check raise. And a couple of things can happen when we check raise. Sometimes we'll actually drive out a higher draw because we don't have the nut draw here, and it puts a ton of pressure. Like if she bets, and let's say, for example, Bauman calls, and then the small blind also calls, or even if he doesn't call, and we check raise, man, it's really hard for like single pairs to continue in her spot. And we also get the ability to drive people out with higher flush draws. So Bauman folds here, and Bond is going to call, and that adds that extra dead money that I was talking about. Where if we're mighty here with 7-6 clubs and we check raise, we put a lot of pressure on a single pair here, and there's extra dead money, and we might actually drive out some sort of higher flush draw, like king 9 of clubs or something like that, that we actually need out of the hand with this particular hand. So most likely when it goes bet call, I'm going to check raise, whereas heads up, it actually can be a little bit more dicey. So it goes call, call, and now the pot here is $405, and we're going to move to the turn. And that's exactly one of the cards that I was talking about, why this is actually slightly better than just a quote-unquote normal straight draw, flush draw. He picks up an open-ended card now. Remember, a 9 would give him a double gutter, and 8 gives him an open-ended. It's an extra 6 outs to give him additional equity. And now he has a full 15 out draw here with 7-6 clubs. And if he had check raised and the preflop raiser had called, he could decide what he might want to do on this turn. Most of the time, if the preflop raiser bets and calls a check raise, they're not going to be folding on this card. You can sometimes play it a little bit cagey with the stack sizes. We went over this maybe a few months ago, sometimes actually throwing in a double check raise. Sometimes you can check and get a reverse free card. And if you do want to go bet, you'd probably want to leave yourself some money to bluff the river. So if Queen of Felt has 900 here, and we bet, say, like 300 on the turn, and Queen of Felt calls, the pot would be like 1,000, she'd have 585 left. Is that going to be enough to get her off the hand? So you'd have to shape this a little bit on the turn. You have to shape the size of the bet to add fold equity, because or you could just open rip the turn, but that usually doesn't, that's not going to add extra fold equity against people who are holding on with overpairs. So I'm talking about if this, of course, was heads up. So the turn's an 8. Again, that didn't happen. Everyone's sort of just playing it passively. We don't know what Bond has here. Gets checked over to Queen of Felt. And give her credit. I mean, this is a blank here. Unless someone's got 10-8, or if Bond had called in the small blind with 8-8, or if somebody was sandbagging on the flop, the 8 doesn't really change anything. It does give people additional equity. But as you will see, I'm still, well, I'm not shocked, but it still doesn't surprise me about how passively people will sometimes play draws. There was a hand, I think it was from a different night of TCH. We put it up on one of the highlight reels on the TCH YouTube channel. And I think the name of the video was like, They Don't Believe Him, Big Daddy Chaz. Like, it was from a few nights ago where he won a bunch of money. And he actually turned an open-ended straight draw and a flush draw on an ace-king high board. And he actually check raised it with a 15 out draw. The guy ended up having ace king, 6-4 spades scooped both times. But it still doesn't surprise me that some of these people play this like passively. I mean, part of the reason why you sometimes have to get concerned about a turn card like this is that even though it doesn't necessarily fit into making a better hand, it's going to give a draw like this additional equity. And then if somebody puts pressure on you, like a guy like this, you have to look at the range of hands where they've sandbagged flop with a strong hand, and then they've got a draw with additional equity. Now, this is interesting though because Madi overcalled the flop. So if we got check raised now, if we bet the turn with ace 10 and then let's say Bond folds and Madi now check raises now, it's kind of weird to me because Madi overcalled the flop on a very draw heavy board. I wouldn't think he's overcalling with eights, and it would appear to me that sets would raise off here in that spot. I mean, occasionally people will over slow play, but it would be it would kind of be on the stranger side here. And from Madi's perspective, once she bets again into two people, she's got a 10 plus here, right? You absolutely know that she has a 10 plus when she bets flop into three people, gets called in two spots, and now is basically going to bet again here on the turn. And she takes a sizing here of about 150, and she's left with 735. This guy folds out, and he just calls. Now, again, what I will say in this particular spot is, let's say she bets 150, and he calls again. Now I would definitely check raise here. I really think that you would need to check raise here. You're going to put a shit ton of pressure on the Queen of Felt. It's going to look very strong, even though, a really savvy hand reader might think you're full of shit because you waited to raise the turn, but you could still have like 10-8 suited, something like that. If it went bet call and I didn't check raise flop, I'd definitely check raise turn. We want to drive this higher draw out too. And it actually puts an immense amount of pressure on her because we were basically check raising her all in. And it's on the turn too, which is inherently more stronger than the flop a lot of times, in live poker. He just calls. So he's just going to call. So remember the action. Again, like we can pretend that we don't know what he has, even though that we see he has a draw. She's bet the flop. He called. She's bet the turn. He called. And we've got the nut 10, and he's going to be much, much wider than anyone else at the table because he's closing the action in the straddle. It would be different, slightly different if it was from a different position. And it would be kind of interesting if he had called in the small blind and continued to call, because then I still think that he's got a fair amount of suited broadways in there in the form of 10x, Jack 10, Queen 10 that are still going to call down. I would definitely value betting against the small blind as well. So pot 705, she's got 735 left. River's a 7. River is a 7, and he now checks again. So this is a spot where I would be more comfortable, and this is why you have to go back and think about the building blocks of hand reading comes from pre-flop position. Who do you think I would be more comfortable value betting here with ace 10 across three streets? The small blind or the straddle? And the answer would definitely be the small blind, because the small blind, or for that matter, somebody who's called in the field, but let's specifically look at the small blind because it's going to get checked to us. The small blind should not really have 4-6 here to complete a straight. The small blind really shouldn't have 7-8 here. Although 7-8 is, 7-8 actually isn't a, I thought it was a straight draw. But yeah, the small blind shouldn't really have 4-6. Shouldn't really have 5-7, especially if he's next to call. So we don't have to worry about the straight, which is the natural open-ended draw that's on the flop. We don't have to worry about the 5x that somehow paired up that continued on the turn. Whereas in the straddle could have those hands because he has more hands pre. However, when the guy checks to me on the river, you take a look at this, and what does the 7 change? Well, 4-6 came in, yes, but he checked, right? Jack 9 is a straight now. The only way he's going to have Jack 9 is if he specifically has Jack 9 of clubs, so that's one combo. 7-8 now is 2 pair, but again, the only way he's going to have 7-8 is if he has 7-8 of clubs. So we're not really looking at a whole lot of 2 pair here. We're really not, unless he's got 10-7 suited, because he didn't check raise turn with 10-8, so I think we throw that out. So unless he has 10-7 here, or Jack 9 of clubs, or 7-8 of clubs, or he filled 4-6, all of which that check to the river, and I find rather unlikely, he's going to mostly have King 10, Queen 10, Jack 10. And if he's completing, and by the way, 9-10 off, I mean, if you really look at 9-10 off here too as a complete, which most people will look at, when we're counting up the combinations of hands, We have a 10 in our hand, which means that there's 2 10s left in the deck, right? So this is how we count the combinations. There are 4 9s in the deck. So you've got 2 10s times 4 9s is 8. 2 10s times 4 9s is 8 combos of 9 10. So you've got 8 combos of 9 10. You've got 8 combos of Jack 10. You've got 8 combos of Queen 10. You've got 8 combos of King 10. 1, 2, 3, 4. You basically have 32 combos of 10x that we beat. 9 10, Jack 10, Queen 10, and King 10. 32 combos. And then we might lose to, let's say he's in there with 4 6 suited. That's 4 combos. Jack 9 of clubs, that's 5. 7 8 of clubs, that's 6. Not much. And you can't say that all of those hands are the full combinations because some of them are going to lead the river. Maybe only half of them play as a check on the river. You can see that the amount of 10x dwarfs the amount of 2 pair plus hands here by almost 10 times, especially calling from the third blind closing the action with the propensity to have offsuit broadways here and 10x, right? The other thing I didn't include would be like 10-7 off. How many combos of 10-7 off are there? 2 and 3 7s left is 6. So, six total combos of 10-7 plus the other 5, like 2 pair and straight, or 6, maybe 13 combos if you throw in 10-7. Still, this is a bet because a 10 is not going to fold. Now, she's got 735 left here. How much should she bet? Well, it does look very, very strong when she goes bet. But still, I still think you could probably bet 350 to 400. 350 to 400, something like that. And I have to tell you that, this might be a spot, as I talked about on the podcast and from the first hand here, where I would have a really, really hard time bet folding because with the pot being 705, the guy checks and say we bet like 350, we're going to be getting an incredible price, right? It's going to be like 1700, 350 for me to call. And I just don't buy the fact that someone's going to check raise the river here with 2 pair. So basically what he's saying is that he has 4-6 or he has Jack 9 of clubs and he's checked the river. Again, if we only give him the 4-6 suited combos, that's 4 combos and Jack 9 of clubs is 5. How many times has he checked the river with those hands? Because it's going to get checked back a lot on the river. If it's 50% of the time, it's very, very few combos. If he's got all the 4-6s, so he's got 16 combos of 4-6, 4 suited ones and the 12 off suited ones, and then he's got Jack 9 of clubs, that's, 17. How often does he take those hands for a check raise all in? Again, 50% of the time. Well, now he's got like 7 combos. Obviously, the river is under bluffed, but I think with one pot size bet left, if I was going for a third street here, I would have a very, very difficult time bet folding, especially if I do like a little reverse block, what looks like a kind of a value bet. Like if I bet 250 and then the guy thought about it for a while and then he jammed all in, I think on this run out, I'm calling. I just don't buy it. But once again, we see here, multi-way, that she's just going to give up. She's just going to check back. And I remember piping in to the live chat. I watched this hand live. This was from 6:15. And I said in the live chat, where's the value bet? You can actually go back and watch the 6:15 episode. The live chat's there. I said, I'm Crush Live Poker on the YouTube. Where's the value bet? Where's the value bet? And the people in the chat were like, what is he calling with if you bet again? How about 9-10, Jack 10, Queen 10, King 10, and Ace 10? Ace 10, of course, we tie to. But I don't know where these people play. And I think it's just one of these things that they convince themselves that the opponent's not going to call with worse. We see it all the time. This one should be certainly a thin value bet. This one's a little bit dicier than the previous hand with King, that's for sure. It's less of a slam dunk, but I make this value bet, and you should make this value bet all day long as well. All right, let's take a look at our next hand here. And this is from the same night, and this is going to be actually involve a 4-bet pot, which is obviously not all that common, but still going to deal with a river spot of lost value. The guy who had actually walked away had 8, so this would have went down a little bit different. So this guy's going to open here to 20. You can see he's got a $900 stack from the hijack. Big Daddy Chaz was by far the most aggressive player at the table. Preflop does a lot of 3-betting. he is going to 3-bet here on the button, which I think is fine with the ace queen offsuit. And then we're going to get a cold call here from Jay in the big blind with pocket tens. Again, we've talked about this many times in the past. First of all, at this stack depth against an aggressive button 3-better from late position in the hijack, I'm going to be 4-betting here heads up anyways. But now, especially with a dead flat call in between, the hands that are close become slam dunk 4-bets. This is obviously going to be a slam dunk 4-bet because of the fact that you're getting an overlay in the middle. So, you could make this 3x. You can make it to 180, something like that. He chooses a really kind of a small sizing. I mean, he goes to 145, which is just under a min raise. I mean, I can sometimes see that if you're cold 4-betting. Sometimes you take the smaller sizing of like 2.3 to 2.4, or if the stacks are really, really short. But from out of position, I still think that you tend to want to go kind of on the at least 3x side. And they are starting out at basically 200 big blinds effective because it's straight 5-5 in this hand. And the guy started with about 1,000. So I would probably make this at least 175-ish. He made it 145. And at that point, if he did make sort of a standard kind of 4-bet size to 175, 180, Chaz could probably fold ace queen off, especially with the dead call in between. But here, getting this price, it's really hard to fold to basically a min raise, even though, this guy is in the hand here as well. So he's going to continue on, and obviously that's going to allow Jay to continue on. It looked like he thought about 5-betting, but then thought better of it. I mean, very, very occasionally you could do that because there's extra dead money out there. That would be a situation where you think that this guy is 4-betting a wider range because of the dead call in between, so you're going to 5-bet. I mean, I've done that a few times. But usually in live poker, when a guy 4-bets, they usually have it. It's not that much of a bluff. So Chaz calls and Jay Lee calls. So we've got a 4-bet pot here, and it's 440 here to the flop. And it comes out Jack 3 here with a couple of clubs. One of the things I think that you have to recognize here is Doc here has 2 red kings, and he actually quickly checks it over to Big Daddy Chaz. Maybe he thinks that Big Daddy Chaz is going to take a stab at it. And it gets checked around. Even though this is 3-handed, one of the things I do want to make a point to note for you to note here is that if you do have overpairs that you sometimes check back, whether it's for deception or to get 2 streets later on and make your hand look like ace king, by the end of the hand, if you know that your hand is good, you got to make up for the value that you sort of lost by basically not betting the flop. Now he has under 2 pot size bets left. So even if you were to bet, say, half pot on the turn and got called, he could probably still get all the rest of the money in the river. So it's okay for him to check here sometimes. Here with kings, it doesn't need all that much protection, and he can do it like I said, he's making it look like maybe he has ace king, something like that. But we'll see what happens here in a second. So it gets checked around, turns a 6. And Jay Lee here is going to check again. That's kind of interesting. I mean, rarely would I find myself in a spot where I'm calling 3-bets cold with 10-10 in the big blind. I would probably 4-bet Big Daddy Chaz's initial 3-bet because Big Daddy Chaz is so wide with 10-10. So it's hard for me to imagine being a spot like this out of the big blind. But once it gets checked around, usually live players don't check over pairs all that much because they're scared of getting beat. Obviously, I understand that this board is paired, and there's also a possibility that the guy on the button could be sandbagging a jack by checking back. But I would tend to probably put out a protection bet here with 10s, 25 to 30%, something like that, just because 10s are so vulnerable and the pot's getting large, especially if you had the intention of checking and calling too, because, I think that ace kings aren't going to start bluffing now. But he does check, and Doc here with the 2 red kings, as long as he can get through Big Daddy Chaz, he most likely is going to have the best hand because it's going to be very rare for a jack to check twice. So now he bets out 175 or 200. He bets about 200. And Jay Lee here is going to eventually call. Now, obviously, we can see Jay Lee's hand. And the pot's 840, and Doc's got about 580 left. And we're going to see a pretty blank river. So the river's an 8. So, yes, we can see Jay Lee's hand. But let's go back to hand reading here, and it's nice to have the text box up there on the left-hand side. You say, what does Jay Lee have here? Like, we've got kings, but let's put ourselves in Doc's spot where we 4-bet pre, but we took a small sizing, which means that people probably aren't going to fold to the initial 3-bet. But more importantly, Jay Lee flat called 3-bet in the middle and then called the 4-bet, right? Chaz doesn't have anything. He's out of the hand. The guy has check called on the turn. Now, it's not just check calling the turn. He's checked the flop, which is natural, but he also checked the turn. He check called on the turn. He made the decision to check the turn and call. So if you look at this and you say a guy check calls the turn after calling 3-bets cold pre-flop out of the big blind, what is this most likely holding? Most likely it's going to be a pair that has flat called in between. I don't even think it's really a whole lot of flush draws here, because flush draws I think might actually come out and bet, plus how often is he calling with 2 suited cards to a 3-bet? It's very, very pair heavy here. What are the pairs that people will tend to sometimes call 3-bets to cold in between and not know what to do? It's usually of the variety of queen, queen, jack, jack. Sometimes guys will 4-bet off queen, queen. They should be, but queen, queen, jack, jack, but to a lesser extent, jack, jack, 10, 10, 9, 9, and maybe sometimes 8, 8, right? I mean, really, those are the hands that we're looking at. And we beat all of those hands, for exception of one combo of quads. And now, if he did flat call with 8, 8, the fact that he rivered maybe 8's full. We beat queen, queen. We beat 10, 10. We beat 9, 9. By the way, those are all hands that are second pair to the board. And it's just very, very rare that someone's going to have a jack here that's played it in a cagey manner, calling 3-bets cold and then check calling the turn, not betting the turn. It's like, not only does he not bet the turn after the flop gets checked through, but he checks and doesn't check raise turn. He check calls turn and checks river. That's probably the most unlikely line from a jack. You might see a check raise on turn. You might see a check call on turn. And then you might see a check call on turn, and then just a lead river, as opposed to check call turn, and then check river. It's just, I almost entirely discount it when you look at it here. Plus, of course, you can look back at the suits of your kings to see, obviously, king jack of diamonds is impossible. There's one combo of king jack of spades that's possible here with what the suits are out on the flop. So Jay checks, and this is 100% a value bet in this particular spot. The pot's 840. Now, if you don't think that he will call a bet all in, you can obviously exploitably size down here a little bit. I would most likely bet all in if the turn brought in a backdoor draw. So let's say the turn was the 6 of hearts and the hand went down in the same way. And I bet the turn. I check back flop as J, bet 200 on the turn. The guy checked me on the river. I would probably move in at that point. Because then at that point, it looks like we only have a jack plus, and people are going to look us up with hands that like Jay has here because they think that maybe we missed a backdoor flush draw. With no backdoor flush draw out there, it's kind of hard to find a bluff. Like if I'm in Jay Lee's spot somehow and I get to this river like this and you check back flop and you bet turn and move all in on river after 4-betting pre-flop, remember. It's really hard for me to find a bluff there because a lot of players are going to be content to check back ace king, which is the primary non-paired hand that 4-bets pre, right, is ace king. I don't know if ace king is going to move all in here at the end as a bluff. So I've got a lot of live experience with this. I'm not sure, this guy's level of live experience, but my point is that it still looks super strong to do that. So you might want to exploitably go like 300 to 350. It's 100% a bet though. I mean, what are you possibly scared of? Even if he occasionally has one combo of quad jacks and he ran into 8s, he's got all the 9s, all the 10s, some of the queens. And I think all those hands are going to call, for sure. Jay checks, and then, Doc's just happy to go to showdown with it. And it's just like, come on, guys. This is where you need to have the value. This is where you need to put the value into your game. And, he's got about, actually, he only had about 500 left. Like it said that he had more than, I guess that's right, 580. Yeah, so he got about 580 left. I mean, it's really hard to bet fold right? I mean, with the pot size, I mean, you're gonna go like 250 fold, right? Because if you bet, say 250, you're left with, or say you go like 280 just to make it even. You're left with like 300 left, right? So you bet 280, the pot's 1120, and then the guy jams for 580 total. It's like 1600, 300 for you to call at the end. I mean, it's kind of like, oh God, maybe he did actually sandbag something. But I'm not thinking about sizing small to necessarily bet full. But what I'm saying is this has to be a bet here, even though it's a multi-bet spot. Thanks for watching this video, and if you like what you've seen, please hit the subscribe button. And if you want to check out poker training videos, head over to crushlivepoker.com. You can use the coupon code in the description for the first month for free.